Hello, I'm Dr. Marcus Canfield, and I work at Down Wellness Center down here in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Tonight's topic is going to be, is Alzheimer's really type 3 diabetes? Did you know every 7 seconds a baby boomer turns 50? Only 1 in 10,000 will make it to 100 years of age. The human body and brain is capable of 150 years. That's crazy to think about. That we actually have the capacity to live that long. How long has it been since, well, now you're reading about more and more that people are living to 100 years. But 150? That is quite amazing that we have the capability to do that. Only about 25% of aging and disease can be attributed to our genes. The rest is up to us, or to you as an individual. You have your choice of what to do with what you've been given through the lifestyle that you choose. Here are some facts in regards to Alzheimer's. It's the 5th leading cause of death in women. More than 5 million Americans currently suffer from it. 13.4 million will acquire this disease by 2050, and currently there is no cure. There isn't even a test for definitiveness. Although MIT, as you read, researchers have found that there is a protein, but the problem is that you have to go through a spinal tap to figure out what that protein is. And if any of you have had a spinal tap, you probably will not go through it for a test. Here's some more. This is the question that we have to ask ourselves more than anything else. If you knew you were going to develop it, would you want to know? Now, I ask that question because there's 2 reasons. What if you're young enough, let's say in your 30s, and you're applying for insurance, either life insurance, health insurance, whole 9 yards. Let's say you want to get that test done. Then that test, let's say you are predispositioned to receive this disease or this dysfunction of the brain. Would they then continue to underwrite you? I only ask you that for your own personal understanding. But would you really want to know that you would subject everyone else to this dysfunction of the brain? Because Alzheimer robs us of our cognitive ability. We get memory loss, confusion, and well, you lose your mind. And as we age, 65 years or older, we increase our chances by 10% with age. And baby boomers, 60 to 80, this will cost $627 billion to Medicare. There's no actual cost in what the psychological price tag is on you or your family. So some of the studies that lead us to this are 84% of all adults were concerned that they or someone in their family would be affected. We spend $6 billion a year fighting cancer, but only $500 million a year fighting for Alzheimer's. A lot of the medical emphasis at this present time seems to be only on genes. But the actual truth is, lifestyle and prescription changes are the only options, or are they? This hopefully will enlighten us and allow us to look at things from a little different perspective. Because we all have to know that we look through life through our own prism. Age and memory. Some forgetfulness is normal. It just comes with as we grow, and also what we do in our daily lives. The different stresses that we're under, our body is taxed, our brain is a muscle, it gets fatigued. There is going to be some forgetfulness, which is completely normal. Blood flow to the brain becoming less robust, we lose brain cells. We diminish production of acetylcholine, which is really your cell-to-cell communication. So as acetylcholine is lessened in the body can't communicate from one cell to the next. So you become less efficient in your body's ability to communicate. So as you can see the picture on the right there, you have an 87-year-old brain and a 27-year-old brain. You can see how the folds are different. There's more blackened area up in the upper left and right on the left-hand side. On the 27-year-old, which is the right-hand side, the white matter goes up further into that crevice. Those folds is how the body is communicating. As they begin to cave in, as you see on the left-hand side, the 87-year-old, that's when our brain deficiency becomes less robust, and it becomes even more deficient in the body's ability to communicate from one cell to the next. So let's look at what is Alzheimer's specifically. Originally, it's thought to be a buildup of protein-based plaques in the brain, which currently 27% of Americans have a family member with this disease. It's almost 1 in 3. And as the rate the statistic comes up with as it continues, it's going to be more likely closer to 1 to 2 than it is to 1 to 3. And Alzheimer's is not a normal part of aging. It's not what we're supposed to do. It's the best practice is not to get it. Type 1 and type 2 diabetes, every single one that has that dysfunction of the pancreas or the body's ability to process insulin or sugar correctly always has another complicating disease present. Whether or not it's actually fully manifested itself or not is still to be determined. But the research is showing that everyone with either type 1 or type 2 has another secondary pathology that will be as debilitating as the first. So one of the issues is cardiovascular. How many times have you heard of people with heart attacks, high blood pressure, free radical, high cholesterol? All these different aspects deal with Alzheimer's because they regulate blood flow to and from the brain. Free radical exposure is increased hydrogen really inside the body. The body isn't able to buffer appropriately, so you're more acidic. Anytime you have increased free radical, that's what gives you your lines across your forehead, changes of eye color, wrinkling. All these aspects take place because our body isn't able to deal appropriately from the brain to the body, cell-to-cell communication. So Alzheimer's disease is a destruction of the brain cells, specifically the neurons, in areas of the brain that are vital to memory and mental abilities. As we saw earlier, decreased acetylcholine required for cell-to-cell communication, which we saw in that picture from the 87 and 27-year-old. And then as you accumulate these beta amyloid proteins, it leads to formation of what is really called just plaques. We've heard of plaque on the teeth, plaque elsewhere. What it is as we have a picture coming up, it's right here, is little groupings that don't allow the cell to call. So just like when we pick up the phone and the call gets dropped, you could say that's an amyloid plaque. Because the body wasn't able to receive or send that call, just like you weren't able to make that call to the person that you were trying to reach. So you're talking about 4 bars, Verizon. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is literally what the body's saying every second of every day with these acetylcholines. Well, when the body isn't able to communicate, the body doesn't hear me now. The amyloid plaques come in and diminish that aspect. So the body isn't able to communicate from one cell to the next. So they're called tau clumps, where they're literally a break in the communication, as if someone took a cable and cut it. So we can't, that's what is showing up in Alzheimer's. Here's a bigger or in-depth microscopic, electron microscopic picture of what this looks at. It's even green. You take plaque pictures of our teeth, usually shows up with what color? Black, greenish color. It's kind of ironic that it's very similar. Plaque buildup in our teeth is usually what? Increased sugar. Wow. Increased sugar, increased plaque in the brain. Kind of interesting. Here's now the cross section of a normal brain versus one with Alzheimer's. As you can see, the language section on the right with the Alzheimer's versus the left, there's not as much gray matter or white matter. There's bigger gaps in the folds. If you look just inward just slightly and to the left, on the Alzheimer's side, you have a memory. There is no white matter in that area. On the left-hand side, there is white matter. White matter is very intricate for understanding how the cell-to-cell communication. Some of the other aspects, as you see, are the ventricles. Anytime you have a larger gap, or an increase or a decrease in surface area, you have a decrease in the body's ability to communicate from one cell to the next. So enzymes. Enzymes are huge. They're talking about enzymes for everything now. But enzymes, they're a necessary piece for your body. One key to addressing Alzheimer's, the research have found, is enzymes that clears away misfolded proteins in nerves are a hallmark for this disease. So the key to preventing Alzheimer's is to stop the protein buildup in the brain. Enzymes stop this buildup. So as the body is understanding how to regulate these proteins or these folds so that the body has a better chance of communicating, getting 4 bars versus 1 bar of the body's cell-to-cell piece, we can then address and critique the chance of you receiving this. So why is this important? Because now what we're finding out is there's a growing evidence that the brain is insulin resistant, which is important for blood sugars. We see that most frequently in type 1 or type 2 diabetes. Also, you have a toxic protein called ADDL, which is a free radical damage, which destroys these insulin receptors. Insulin receptor tells you how much insulin is available in the body. These are specifically located on the brain cells. These were discovered a decade ago by Dr. Klein out of Brown University. So one of the questions I'm going to pose to you a few times through this is this. Does diabetes 3 mean that the brain is no longer secreting enough insulin and therefore the brain cells will deteriorate? Or is it that the evidence suggests that Alzheimer's sufferers have a particular protein within the brain that actually removes insulin receptors from the brain cells, making the cells stop accepting necessary insulin? The reality of that statement, though, or that question, is that either way, insulin isn't being absorbed in the brain. Or it's being absorbed too much and the body isn't able to process it. So there again, we have an insulin problem. If it's an insulin problem, then it's a blood glucose problem. If it's a blood glucose problem, then it has to fall in line with a diabetes issue. And if it can't be in the blood or of the pancreas, and this is located specifically in the brain, then is this really Alzheimer's? Or is it really just type 3 diabetes? The cell membrane is the key. The composition of our cell membrane is critical. It's made up of healthy fats, or lipids. A healthy lipid is a correction of lipid dysfunction along with proper dietary fats, which can stabilize and dramatically reverse symptoms of this illness, even if long-standing. That's a huge statement by Dr. Foster. So let's try to understand this more closely. In type 3 diabetes, any neurotoxic illness, Alzheimer's, let's just call it, is a result of a dysfunctional cell membrane. If the cell membrane can no longer absorb insulin due to damage, the cell starves or dies. Wouldn't this cause a genetic change in the cells resulting in those plaques that we saw earlier? And our brains consist of 60% lipids. So we're really all just really fat heads. 80% of all synapses are lipid in content. So if our brain is 60% and all of our synapses are 80%, and those components there specifically deal with the ability for the body to process or the brain to process sugar, we really have to look at this. So there's neurotoxins dissolve fatty tissue or membranes. They move through the fatty tissues, such as mercury or heavy metals. Neurotoxins will unite with bile, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Neurotoxins can create renegade fats, which are very long-chain fatty acids, which the body does not have the opportunity to change or alter very quickly. So you lose your circuits, you lose your energy, which is ATP, and you create inflammation. And it's worsened by high carbohydrate diets, which is what our diets in America consist of the most. So lipids are misunderstood. Lipids vibrate in the cell at millions of times per second. They really are your singing backbone of life. You have your good fats and your bad fats. Good fats are your high energy, and bad fats are your renegades, or your poor energy. Everyone's heard of LDL and HDL. Good fats are your HDL. LDL isn't really poor, it's misunderstood, but that's for a whole nother discussion. Lipids are incorporated into every membrane of every cell of the human body, especially the brain. And lipid is the technical name of essential oils, which means to stay liquid in the body. Coconut oil is a good example of this. Coconut oil you can get at the store. Sometimes you get it in a little drum at room temperature or just slightly below. It becomes a hard solid. But what happens sometimes is you pull it out of that bucket and you put it in your hand, the warmth of your hand automatically turns into a liquid. This is what the body is saying. We ingest the fat inside of our mouth and the body breaks it down. What it does is it turns it into a liquid that the brain can absorb, which is essential for your brain's connection. They're the building of the brain. So 4 things that we got to consider here are, we got to detoxify, which is the neurotoxins in the biliary tree, which consists of your liver, your gallbladder, and your stomach. Supplement after once this tree has been cleansed. We've got to alter the diet, good food combinations, good fats, complex carbs. And then you can also use long-term supplements for prevention. So here's the biliary tree. You have your liver, which is up in the upper left. There's 2 lobes. Your gallbladder is the green thing coming right down the middle, and your stomach. This tree helps your body perform and process every single fatty acid and waste product of your entire system. If this tree is infected with disease, I say dis-ease, where it is not in harmony with one another, it promotes dysfunction in the system, and free radicals roam about the body, and then you create inflammation, and the body is not able to do as is desired. So one of the things that we got to do is we got to detoxify the neurotoxins in the biliary tree. So first we got to correct the gut abnormalities as the first step. The biliary tree is vital in detoxification of neurotoxins. And neurotoxins bind with bile. And the body is poisoned over and over and over again. Because the toxic gets bile, it gets recirculated. So as the body, that's what your circulatory system does. Oxygenation comes in, it gets filtrated through the rest of your body, gets dropped off at a cell, picks up something else, and gets taken back to your lungs so that you can get rid of it. That's why we have carbon dioxide. But that's, our body recirculates. That's what our kidneys do. Our kidney filtrates, our liver filtrates, our gallbladder. All these aspects, the brain being a fat, heavy piece, absorbs these toxics. Because all these toxins get stored in fat. So where are they going to get stored? Either in your stomach or in your brain. They're the only 2 options that this has. So the leading to destruction of membranes equals less insulin absorption, which is found in all different types of diabetes, not just type 3, in which what we're discussing today. So some quick aspects of all this is going to be supplementation. So one of the things that we can do is supplement at the end of all this. So we have gallbladder formula. What this does is that specifically cleanses that biliary tree that we looked at. So let's go back there real fast. So this biliary tree, what it does is it allows the liver enzymes to work more appropriately. Increases stomach acidity, so you have an increase of breakdown of your food. It also allows your gallbladder to bind the bile more appropriately so that the neurotoxins don't get stored in the body, but get removed through the stomach and out your stool. So that's what that does specifically. One of the other aspects that we looked at here was zinc. Zinc regulates sugar and protein metabolism, also deals with DNA formation, and increases energy production. This basically it does the opposite of everything that type 3 really deals with. Type 3, what it does is it increases or deregulates sugar and protein metabolism, alters DNA formation, and decreases your energy. So zinc does the opposite. It balances the sugar and protein metabolism, enhances the DNA formation so the body does what's supposed to with it, and again, it gives it the energy production. You have alpha lipoic acid, which has turmeric, an immune stimulant, potent antioxidant, which helps to do those free radicals. High lipase is up here because gallbladder surgery is very common right now, where most people are just getting their gallbladders removed. So when that takes place, your body can't break down lipids. Well, so what do we got to do? We got to supplement with an enzyme called high lipase, which allows the body to break down these things. You have lemon oil. We talked about essential fatty acids a little bit in regards to the way they need to be liquefied. Lemon oil is one of the almost the exact configuration of a lot of the proteins or the essential fatty acids that your brain needs to re-stimulate those folds appropriately and increase cell-to-cell communication. One of the things that we like here is protandum, which is an antioxidant remover. We have brain protex, which decreases the body's ability to break down acetylcholine. So if the body isn't able to break down acetylcholine, which was that cell-to-cell communication, is increased from side to side. So we get 4 bars in that case. The other thing it does is it increases brain circulation or blood circulation to the brain. When we do that aspect, well, then the body has a better chance to understand what's going on. Then sugar reg. That's just one of those things that helps to regulate your blood sugar. If you're type 2, what it does is help to keep you within, balance it more appropriately as you alter your diet so that you don't become dependent or go into insulin shock because your body isn't processing sugar right. Some of the other things that we need to look at are essential fatty acids. Essential fatty acids such as super GLA, which is it fights off renegade fatty acids. You have super omega, because your essential fatty acids need to be 3, 6, and 9s, which super GLA, super omega 3, and then your krill oil. If you have a shellfish allergy, we really need to be careful about krill. That is one of those things that can spark an anaphylactic shock if you are allergic to shellfish. So if you are, please do not take this. But you want to rotate these. The brain will get used to one, and if you give it another one, it will learn how to process the other ones more appropriately. So if you do each one of these for 30-day increments and rotate, you're doing each one of them 4 times a year, which isn't that bad. So we're going to go ahead and propose the question again here in the conclusion. Is type 3 diabetes really Alzheimer's? As you see, and as you've seen, the news isn't concrete yet, but the evidence certainly is. Because remember, we looked at here that type 3 diabetes means that the brain is no longer secreting enough insulin, and therefore the brain cells will deteriorate. As the brain cells stop working, the brain's receptors also decline in function. Although some individuals believe that Alzheimer's is actually diabetes type 3, yet evidence sometimes suggests that Alzheimer's suffers from a particular protein within the brain that actually removes insulin receptors from the brain cells, making the cells stop accepting necessary insulin to enable the cell's survival and also preventing the brain's memory from working properly. There again, in either case though, you're dealing with insulin. So if you're dealing with insulin, that's a diabetes. So we really have to look at this aspect further. So what can you do? You can protect the brain, the cell membrane, so insulin doesn't flood the brain, causing it not to be absorbed. The biggest thing is prevention starts with you now. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.